The morning sun peeked through the stable windows, casting long shadows across the hay-strewn floor. Inside one of the larger stalls, a magnificent brown stallion lay on his side, his coat once gleaming with health now dulled by months of inactivity. This was Spirit, previously known throughout the show jumping circuit as one of the most promising horses in the state. The stable owner stood at the stall entrance, her heart heavy as she watched the horse's failed attempts to rise. Spirit's front legs would push against the ground with determination, but his hindquarters remained motionless, refusing to cooperate. Each attempt ended the same way, with the proud horse slumping back onto his bed of straw, his dark eyes reflecting a mix of confusion and frustration. Just 3 months ago, Spirit had been soaring over jumps with the grace of a bird in flight. The regional championships had been going perfectly. He'd cleared every obstacle with room to spare, his powerful legs carrying him effortlessly through the course. Nobody could have predicted what happened at the triple combination jump. A slight miscalculation, a fraction of a second's hesitation, and both horse and rider had taken a devastating fall. The rider had recovered quickly, walking away with just a few bruises, but Spirit hadn't been so lucky. The impact had damaged the nerves controlling his back legs, leaving him unable to stand. The stable's regular vet had done everything possible, calling in specialists from across the country. They'd tried various treatments, medication, physical therapy, alternative medicine, but nothing seemed to help. "Come on, boy," the stable owner whispered, her voice catching as she remembered all the blue ribbons that once decorated Spirit's stall. Now those same ribbons hung forgotten in the corner, collecting dust. She reached for the sugar cubes in her pocket, Spirit's favorite treat, but stopped herself. Even this small gesture had become painful, as the horse would try to get up whenever he sensed a treat coming, only to fall back down. The stable hands did their best to keep Spirit comfortable. They turned him from side to side every few hours to prevent bed sores, kept him clean, and made sure he had fresh water and hay within easy reach. But everyone could see the stallion's spirit dimming with each passing day. A horse wasn't meant to lie down for so long, their bodies weren't built for it. Last week, after the 5th veterinarian had shaken their head and suggested that the kindest option would be to put Spirit down, the stable owner had finally started to consider it. The thought broke her heart, but watching this proud animal suffer was even worse. She'd given herself until the end of the month to make the final decision. The news had spread quickly through the small equestrian community. Old competitors stopped by to say goodbye, some bringing carrots or apples, others just standing quietly at the stall door, remembering Spirit in his glory days. Even the local newspaper had run a small story about the fallen champion, accompanied by a photo of Spirit clearing a massive jump, his legs tucked perfectly beneath him, his whole body the very picture of power and grace. The stable owner spent every morning and evening with Spirit, talking to him softly about the good old days. She'd tell him about the time he'd refused to enter the trailer until someone brought him his favorite blue ball, or how he used to steal hats off people's heads when they weren't looking. Sometimes she could swear he understood every word, his ears flicking back and forth as she spoke. The riding students who passed by his stall would often stop to pat his neck or offer him bits of apple. The younger ones didn't quite understand why the big horse wouldn't get up to greet them like the others did. Their innocent questions, "When will Spirit be better?" or "Why can't the doctors fix him?" were the hardest to answer. Despite his condition, Spirit remained gentle. He never showed signs of aggression, even when the daily care routines must have been uncomfortable. The veterinarians had said this was unusual. Many horses become difficult to handle when they're in pain or distressed. But Spirit seemed to understand that everyone was trying to help him. In the quiet moments of early morning, before the stable became busy with lessons and training sessions, the owner would sometimes catch Spirit watching the other horses in the paddock. His eyes would follow their movements, and occasionally he let out a soft nickering sound, as if calling to his old friends. Those were the moments that hurt the most, seeing such a magnificent animal reduced to watching life from the sidelines. The stable had become a quieter place since Spirit's accident. It was as if everyone could feel the weight of what was coming. Even the most cheerful riding instructors spoke in hushed tones when passing his stall. The decision looming ahead cast a shadow over the whole place, making the usual happy sounds of horses and riders seem somehow muted. As the stable owner turned to leave that morning, she heard Spirit let out a soft snort. Looking back, she saw him making another attempt to rise, his front legs bracing against the ground. For a brief moment, she thought she saw his back leg twitch, but no, it must have been a trick of the light. The specialists had been clear. The nerve damage was permanent. She wiped away a tear and closed the stall door quietly behind her, unaware that everything was about to change in the most unexpected way. The morning sun continued to climb higher in the sky, and the stable began to fill with its usual activities. Horses nickered for their breakfast, riders arrived for their lessons, and stable hands moved efficiently through their morning routines. But in Spirit's stall, something was stirring, a spark of hope that nobody had yet noticed, waiting to be discovered by the most unlikely hero. It was a bright Tuesday afternoon when a small figure in pink rubber boots came skipping into the stable. The little girl, just 6 years old, was early for her riding lesson as usual. Her mother always joked that this was the only time her daughter was ever early for anything. With her favorite book tucked under one arm and a half-eaten apple in her hand, she made her way down the familiar aisle, greeting each horse with a cheerful hello. The riding school had become her second home over the past few months. Despite being the youngest student, she showed a natural way with horses that impressed even the most experienced trainers. While other children her age might be scared of the large animals, she saw them as gentle giants, each with their own personality and story to tell. On this particular day, something different caught her attention. As she passed by one of the larger stalls, she noticed a horse lying down. This wasn't unusual in itself. Horses often lay down to rest, but something about this one made her stop. The horse wasn't sleeping. His eyes were open, alert, watching her with what seemed like curiosity. "Why aren't you standing up?" she asked, stepping closer to the stall. The stable hand who was sweeping nearby looked up with concern. "Sweetie, you shouldn't get too close to that stall," he said kindly. "That's Spirit. He's not well." But the little girl had already noticed how the horse's ears perked up at the sound of her voice. "Is he sick?" she asked, clutching her book tighter. The stable hand paused his sweeping, trying to find the right words to explain the situation to such a young child. "He had an accident," he explained. "He can't use his back legs anymore." He expected the usual reaction, sadness, maybe tears. Instead, the little girl's face lit up with determination. "Then I'll read to him," she declared. "My teacher says reading makes everything better." Before the stable hand could respond, she had already plopped down on a nearby hay bale, opened her book, and begun reading aloud. From that day forward, she became Spirit's most faithful visitor. She would arrive early before every lesson, making a beeline for his stall. Sometimes she brought new books, other times she would tell him about her day at school. The stable staff watched in amazement as the previously dejected horse began showing signs of interest in his surroundings again. Once upon a time, she would begin, and Spirit's ears would instantly prick forward, his eyes following her every movement. She had a way of reading that made every story sound like the most exciting tale ever told, complete with different voices for each character and dramatic hand gestures that made Spirit's head bob up and down as if in appreciation. When she ran out of stories to read, she would share her secrets with him. She told him about the loose tooth that was wiggling but wouldn't fall out, about how she didn't like the green peas at dinner but had to eat them anyway, and about how she was going to be a horse doctor when she grew up so she could help horses like him. The stable owner noticed the change in Spirit. While he still couldn't stand, his eyes had regained some of their old spark. He would whinny softly when he heard the little girl's boots clicking down the aisle, and he started showing more interest in his food. The other riders and stable hands began to notice too, often pausing in their tasks to listen to the animated stories floating out from Spirit's stall. One day, the little girl brought a drawing she had made in school. It showed Spirit standing up, jumping over a rainbow. "This is you," she explained seriously, holding it up for him to see, "when you get better." The stable owner, who happened to be walking by, felt her heart catch at the child's unwavering belief. Nobody had the heart to tell her that Spirit wasn't expected to recover. How could they explain such a harsh reality to someone who saw the world with such hope? Instead, they watched as she continued her daily visits, her presence bringing a ray of sunshine into what had been a sad situation. She would sometimes bring treats for Spirit, carrots from her mother's garden or apple slices that she carefully cut herself, with adult supervision, of course. She developed a little routine, holding each treat just far enough that Spirit would have to stretch his neck to reach it. "You have to work for it," she would say in a sing-song voice, mimicking what her riding instructor always told her. The other children at the stable started joining her occasionally, sitting cross-legged on the hay as she read her stories. Spirit seemed to enjoy having an audience, and the little girl took her role as storyteller very seriously. She would shush anyone who talked during the exciting parts, insisting that Spirit needed to hear what happened next. What nobody realized was that these simple acts of kindness were about to lead to something extraordinary. The little girl's innocent perspective, free from the adult's certainty about Spirit's condition, would soon open everyone's eyes to a possibility they had all missed. As the sun began to set that evening, casting long shadows through the stable windows, the little girl packed up her books and prepared to leave. "See you tomorrow, Spirit," she called out, as she did every day. "Tomorrow I'm bringing my new book about a flying horse." Spirit nickered softly in response, and for a moment, just a moment, there was a slight movement in his back leg that nobody noticed, nobody except a 6-year-old girl who still believed in miracles. The autumn breeze rustled through the stable doors, carrying with it the sweet scent of fallen leaves. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind where time seemed to slow down and magic could happen. The little girl had arrived for her usual visit with Spirit, her pockets bulging with fresh apple slices her mother had helped her cut that morning. Today was special. She had lost her first tooth the night before, and she couldn't wait to tell Spirit all about it. She hurried down the stable aisle, her new gap-toothed smile beaming as she approached his stall. Spirit greeted her with his usual soft nicker, his ears pricking forward at the sound of her footsteps. "Look," she exclaimed, pointing to the empty space in her smile. The tooth fairy came. She pulled out a shiny coin from her pocket to show him, but in her excitement, she dropped it. The coin rolled under the stall door, coming to rest just beyond Spirit's reach. As she bent to retrieve it, she noticed something that made her pause. Spirit was stretching his neck toward the coin, and as he did, his back leg twitched. It wasn't much, just a tiny movement, but it was definitely there. The little girl froze, her eyes wide with wonder. She had seen the same thing happen yesterday when an apple slice had rolled a bit too far, but she had thought she was imagining things. Curious now, she pulled out one of her apple slices. Instead of holding it right in front of Spirit's mouth as she usually did, she placed it just a little bit farther away. Spirit stretched his neck, trying to reach it, and there it was again, a definite movement in his back legs. "You're trying to move," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. Spirit's ears flicked toward her voice, his eyes bright with interest. She tried again, this time placing the apple slice even further away. Spirit's determination to reach the trait seemed to awaken something in his paralyzed limbs. Both back legs twitched this time, making tiny scraping sounds against the straw. The little girl could hardly contain her excitement. She jumped up, nearly forgetting her tooth fairy coin, and ran to find the stable owner. Her boots clattered on the concrete floor as she searched, her voice echoing through the stable. "Come quick. Come quick. Spirit's legs are working." The stable owner was in the tack room, sorting through riding equipment when the little girl burst in. "Slow down, sweetie," she said, smiling at the child's enthusiasm. But the little girl was already tugging at her sleeve, practically bouncing with urgency. "You have to see. Spirit's legs are moving. They're really moving." The stable owner's heart squeezed. They had all seen how the little girl refused to accept Spirit's condition, but this was different. There was something about her certainty that made the owner follow, even though she knew it would probably lead to disappointment. Back at Spirit's stall, the little girl demonstrated her discovery. She carefully placed an apple slice just out of reach, and everyone watched in stunned silence as Spirit stretched to get it. There it was. Unmistakable movement in his back legs. The stable owner pressed her hand to her mouth, hardly daring to believe what she was seeing. Word spread through the stable like wildfire. The regular vet was called immediately, arriving within the hour. The little girl insisted on staying to show him exactly what she had discovered. She demonstrated again and again, using different treats placed at various distances, proving that Spirit's legs responded consistently to the challenge of reaching for food. The vet watched intently, taking notes and examining Spirit's responses. He explained that while the movement was small, it was significant. It showed that some of the nerve pathways were still intact, something all the previous examinations had missed. The little girl listened with her head tilted to one side, not understanding all the big words but knowing from the adults' faces that her discovery was important. Throughout the examination, she stood by Spirit's head, stroking his nose and whispering encouragement. "See," she told him. "I knew you could do it." Spirit's eyes remained focused on her, his trust in this small human evident in every gentle movement. As the afternoon wore on, more people gathered around Spirit's stall. The riding instructor postponed lessons to come see for herself. Other students and their parents crowded around, everyone wanting to witness the miracle the little girl had uncovered. She demonstrated the discovery for each new arrival, beaming with pride as Spirit showed off his newfound movement. The stable owner watched it all with tears in her eyes. Just days ago, she had been contemplating the unthinkable. Now, thanks to the pure, unfiltered hope of a child, there was a chance, a real chance, that Spirit might recover. The little girl's simple method of encouragement had revealed what all the sophisticated medical examinations had missed. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the stable windows, the little girl prepared to leave for the day. She gave Spirit his last apple slice, this time holding it close enough for him to reach easily. "Tomorrow we'll practice more," she promised him solemnly. "And then you'll be jumping over rainbows just like in my drawing." The stable that had been shrouded in sadness for months was now buzzing with hope and excitement. Nobody knew exactly what the future held for Spirit, but one thing was certain. A 6-year-old girl's unwavering belief and keen observation had changed everything. Sometimes the greatest discoveries come from the simplest places, and the purest forms of healing can be found in a child's unconditional love. The stable buzzed with newfound energy the morning after the little girl's discovery. The vet had arrived early, armed with equipment and a determined look in his eyes. He had spent the entire night researching similar cases and consulting with specialists across the country. What the little girl had found wasn't just a glimmer of hope, it was a medical breakthrough. "The nerve pathways aren't completely damaged," he explained to the stable owner, pointing to a detailed diagram he brought. "They're just sleeping." And somehow, that little girl found a way to wake them up. He shook his head in amazement, still struggling to believe that months of medical expertise had been outshone by a child's simple observation. The stable owner listened intently, her coffee growing cold in her hands. The vet was suggesting a new rehabilitation program, one that would build on the movement the little girl had discovered. "It won't be easy," he warned, "and we can't promise anything. But there's a chance, a real chance, that Spirit could regain some use of his back legs." News of Spirit's potential recovery spread quickly through the local horse community. People who had written off the fallen champion began stopping by again, this time with renewed hope in their eyes. The little girl's discovery had changed everything, turning what was supposed to be Spirit's final week into the beginning of a new chapter. That afternoon, when the little girl arrived for her regular visit, she found a small crowd gathered around Spirit's stall. The vet had set up cameras to record Spirit's movements, and there were strange new machines with blinking lights nearby. For a moment, she hesitated, worried that all these changes might mean she couldn't visit her friend anymore. But the stable owner quickly waved her over. "We need your help," she said warmly. "You're the only one who knows exactly how to get Spirit to move his legs." The little girl's face lit up with pride. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her daily supply of apple slices, and got straight to work. Under the vet's careful guidance, they began documenting exactly what made Spirit respond. They discovered that it wasn't just about the treats, it was the little girl's voice, her encouragement, the way she made everything feel like a game rather than a medical procedure. Spirit seemed to understand that this wasn't just about reaching for treats anymore, it was about getting better. The vet designed a series of exercises based on the little girl's method. They started small, trying to get Spirit to move his legs deliberately rather than just reflexively. The little girl would place treats at carefully measured distances, talking to Spirit the whole time in her cheerful voice. "You can do it," she would say. "Just a little bit more." Sometimes, when Spirit seemed tired or frustrated, she would sit down and read to him from her favorite books. The vet noticed that these quiet moments were just as important as the physical exercises. They gave Spirit time to rest while keeping his spirits up. The bond between the horse and the little girl seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. Other experts began visiting the stable, drawn by reports of Spirit's unusual case. They'd brought new ideas and equipment, each adding something to the rehabilitation plan. But they all agreed on one thing: the little girl had to stay involved. Her presence had become as crucial to Spirit's recovery as any medical treatment. The stable adjusted its schedule to accommodate Spirit's therapy sessions. The little girl's parents rearranged their evenings so she could spend more time at the stable. Everyone worked together, creating a support system around Spirit and his young friend. Even the other riding students helped out, taking turns preparing treats and keeping Spirit company when the little girl couldn't be there. One particularly memorable afternoon, the vet set up a special harness system in Spirit's stall. It would help support Spirit's weight once he was strong enough to try standing. The little girl eyed the complicated equipment with curiosity. "It's like a superhero suit," the vet explained, making her giggle. She immediately began telling Spirit about all the superheroes she knew, promising him that he would be the first superhero horse. The stable owner watched all of this with growing amazement. Just a week ago, she had been preparing herself for the worst. Now, Spirit's stall had been transformed into a rehabilitation center, complete with specialized equipment and a dedicated team of professionals. But more importantly, it had become a place of hope, all because a little girl refused to accept that nothing could be done. As the day drew to a close, the vet reviewed his notes while the little girl gave Spirit his final treats. "You're doing so well," she told him, her small hand patting his neck. "Soon you'll be the strongest horse in the whole wide world." The stable owner noticed that Spirit's eyes, which had been dull and lifeless just days ago, now sparkled with the same determination they saw in the little girl's face. That evening, after everyone had gone home, the stable owner sat in her office looking at Spirit's old competition photos. She thought about how sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from the most unexpected sources, and how the pure, unquestioning faith of a child had accomplished what medical science alone could not. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now the stable was filled with something that had been missing for months: hope. 2 weeks into Spirit's rehabilitation program, the stable had settled into a new routine. Every morning began with gentle exercises, guided by the vet's expertise and the little girl's natural touch. The special harness system now hung ready in Spirit's stall, waiting for the day when he would be strong enough to try standing. The little girl had started keeping a diary of Spirit's progress, decorated with colorful horse stickers and rainbow drawings. Day 14, she wrote carefully in her big first-grade handwriting. "Spirit moved his back leg 3 times today." She didn't know it, but the vet had started taking pictures of her notes. They captured details about Spirit's responses that even his medical charts missed. One crisp morning, she arrived at the stable wearing a white coat over her regular clothes. "I'm being a horse doctor today," she announced proudly. The vet smiled and handed her a real stethoscope, showing her how to listen to Spirit's heartbeat. Her eyes grew wide with wonder as she heard the strong, steady rhythm. "His heart is telling us a story," she whispered, and somehow that simple observation became part of their therapy routine. The exercises themselves were unlike anything the stable had seen before. Traditional rehabilitation methods were blended with what they now called the treat trail, the little girl's original discovery. She would create paths with carrots and apple pieces, each treat placed slightly further than the last, encouraging Spirit to extend his reach and activate his muscles. "It's like a treasure hunt," she explained to the other children who came to watch. "Spirit has to work hard to find all the treasure." Her enthusiasm was contagious, and soon other young riders were asking to help. They'd formed a small support team, taking turns helping prepare the treat trails and cheering Spirit on during his exercises. The vet had brought in a specialist in equine physical therapy who was amazed by the unconventional approach. "In all my years," she said, watching the little girl work with Spirit, "I've never seen anything quite like this." She began incorporating the child's methods into her own practice, noting how the combination of play and purpose seemed to work better than traditional techniques alone. Some days were harder than others. There were times when Spirit seemed tired or discouraged, his movements slower and less certain. On those days, the little girl would sit by his head, stroking his nose and telling him stories about brave horses who never gave up. She had an uncanny ability to sense when he needed gentle encouragement and when he needed playful motivation. The stable owner had set up a special corner in Spirit's stall with a small chair and a box of books. "This is my office," the little girl declared, arranging her favorite stories and drawing supplies. Between exercises, she would sit there and read aloud, her voice carrying through the stable. Other horses would prick their ears forward when they heard her animated storytelling, and visitors often paused to listen. One particularly challenging day, Spirit seemed reluctant to try moving at all. The vet was concerned, but the little girl had an idea. She asked if she could bring her toy xylophone from home. The next day, she sat in her corner playing simple tunes, and to everyone's amazement, Spirit began moving to the rhythm of her music. This discovery led to the addition of music therapy to Spirit's recovery program. The physical therapy specialist worked with the stable's riding instructor to develop exercises that would help Spirit regain his muscle strength. They used the harness system to provide support while encouraging him to put weight on his back legs. The little girl would stand at the front of the stall during these sessions, holding traits and talking to Spirit in her encouraging voice. "You're doing the hardest part," she told him seriously one day after a particularly tough session. "My teacher says that when you're learning something new, the hardest part is not giving up." The adults exchanged glances, touched by the wisdom in her simple words. Weather couldn't dampen the recovery efforts. On rainy days, the stable became a cozy haven filled with the sounds of the little girl's stories and songs. She would arrive wearing her yellow rain boots, bringing extra treats because, as she explained, rainy days need more sunshine in them. A positive spirit kept everyone motivated, even when progress seemed slow. The local community had started taking notice. A feed store owner donated special treats for Spirit's therapy, and a retired music teacher offered to help incorporate more structured music into the sessions. What had started as one child's discovery had grown into a collaborative effort that brought out the best in everyone involved. As the sun set on another day of therapy, the little girl put away her books and treats. She gave Spirit an extra pat, whispering something in his ear that made his ears prick forward attentively. The stable owner, watching from the aisle, marveled at how this unlikely partnership had transformed not just Spirit's prospects, but the entire atmosphere of the stable. They were all learning that sometimes the best medicine comes from the heart, and that healing happens in ways that can't always be explained by traditional methods. 6 months had passed since the little girl's discovery, and the stable had transformed into a place of daily miracles. The morning sun streamed through the windows, catching dust motes in its golden light as the stable owner walked down the aisle. She paused at Spirit's stall, remembering how close they had come to giving up on him. Now the sight before her made her heart swell with joy. Spirit was supported by the harness system, but his back legs were bearing weight, real weight. The little girl stood in front of him, holding her favorite blue bucket of treats, her face glowing with pride. "Look," she called out excitedly. "He's standing all by himself." The stable owner watched as Spirit maintained his position, his legs trembling slightly but holding steady. The vet checked his stopwatch and nodded approvingly. 2 minutes longer than yesterday, he announced. The little girl did a happy dance, her boots scuffing up bits of straw. She reached into her bucket and pulled out a special apple. She had cut it into the shape of a star that morning, with her mother's help. These standing sessions had become a regular part of Spirit's therapy. What started as mere seconds of supported standing had gradually increased to several minutes. The harness system now served more as a safety net than a full support, as Spirit's muscles grew stronger with each passing day. "Remember when you couldn't even wiggle your toes?" the little girl asked Spirit as she fed him the star-shaped apple piece. "Now look at you. You're the strongest horse in the whole wide world." Spirit's ears flicked forward at her words, and he nickered softly, as if agreeing with her assessment. The physical therapy specialist had documented every step of Spirit's recovery, taking videos and measurements that would help other horses with similar injuries. "It's unprecedented," she explained to visiting veterinary students. "The combination of conventional therapy and the little girl's methods has produced results we never thought possible." But it wasn't just the standing that showed Spirit's progress. He had developed new ways of communicating, especially with his young friend. One tap of his hoof meant he was ready for more exercises. 2 taps meant he needed a rest. The little girl had figured out this system all on her own, and now the therapy team relied on it to gauge Spirit's energy levels. The stable's riding instructor had started incorporating Spirit's story into her lessons, teaching young riders about patience, hope, and the special bond between humans and horses. Sometimes, she would tell them, the biggest victories come in the smallest steps. The children would watch through the stall doors as Spirit worked on his exercises, their own faces reflecting his determination. On this particular morning, something extraordinary happened. As the little girl was setting up the treat trail, she accidentally dropped an apple slice just outside Spirit's usual reach. Before anyone could move to help, Spirit took a small, shaky step forward. The stable went absolutely quiet. It wasn't just a shift of weight or a muscle spasm, it was an actual step. The little girl's eyes grew wide as saucers. "He walked." She whispered, then louder, "He walked." Her voice echoed through the stable, bringing people running from all directions. The vet rushed to document the moment, but Spirit seemed interested only in his young friend's reaction. He nickered softly, reaching for another treat. Tears streamed down the stable owner's face as she watched Spirit take another tentative step. The little girl was practically bouncing with excitement, but she remembered to stay calm for Spirit's sake. "Good boy," she said in her soothing voice. "You're doing so great." The news spread quickly through the horse community. People who had followed Spirit's story from the beginning came to witness his progress for themselves. The little girl proudly demonstrated their therapy routine, showing how Spirit could now move forward slightly to reach for treats, his back legs trembling but supporting him. That evening, as the sun set and the stable quieted down, the little girl sat in her special corner reading one last story to Spirit. It was about a butterfly emerging from its cocoon, growing stronger through struggle. "That's like you," she told him, pointing to the pictures. "You're growing stronger every day." The stable owner, watching from the doorway, realized that Spirit's recovery had taught them all something valuable. The little girl's unwavering belief had shown them that sometimes the best medicine comes wrapped in the simplest packages: a child's love, a gentle voice, and the steady encouragement of never giving up. As twilight deepened, the little girl gathered her things to leave. "Tomorrow, we'll try walking a little further," she promised Spirit. He reached out his neck to nuzzle her hair, leaving bits of straw tangled in it. She giggled and gave him one last pat. "Sweet dreams, brave boy." The stable settled into its nighttime routine, but there was a new energy in the air. In a stall that had once been filled with hopelessness, a fallen champion was rising again, inspired by the pure, unconditional faith of a child. Each small step forward was a victory, each moment of progress a reminder that miracles often come disguised as simple moments of never giving up. 1 year had passed since the little girl first discovered Spirit's hidden potential. The stable yard was filled with morning sunshine as she skipped through the gates, wearing a special dress for what everyone was calling Spirit's Celebration Day. Her parents followed behind, carrying a homemade carrot cake decorated with tiny sugar horses. The stable looked different today. Colorful ribbons hung from the rafters, and hand-drawn pictures from local children covered Spirit's stall door. Each drawing told a part of his story, from the days when he couldn't stand to his remarkable recovery. But the real miracle was waiting inside the stall. Spirit stood tall and proud, his coat gleaming from a fresh grooming. While he wouldn't return to jumping competitions, he had gained something far more valuable, a new purpose. The vet had suggested using Spirit as a therapy horse for children with disabilities, and the idea had blossomed into something beautiful. "Show them what you can do," the little girl whispered to Spirit. With gentle encouragement, he walked slowly but steadily out of his stall. His gait wasn't perfect. There was still a slight unevenness to his steps, but the confidence in his movement brought tears to many eyes. The stable owner remembered the day they had almost given up hope, and now here he was, walking proudly beside his young friend. The local newspaper had sent a photographer to document the celebration. They wanted to share Spirit's story of recovery, but more importantly, they wanted to capture the beginning of his new journey. The little girl, now 7 years old, explained to the reporter how she would help Spirit in his new role. "He knows what it's like to need help getting stronger," she said, patting his neck. "And he's really good at making people feel better. He listens to all your stories and never gets tired of them." The reporter smiled, noting how Spirit gently lowered his head to the little girl's level, their bond evident in every interaction. The stable had been transformed into a therapy center, with Spirit as its heart. Children with various challenges would come for sessions, finding strength and confidence through their interactions with him. The little girl had become a junior volunteer, helping new visitors feel comfortable around the gentle giant. "Remember to talk to him," she would tell them. "He likes knowing what you're thinking." She showed them how to offer treats with flat palms, just as she had done during those early therapy sessions. Spirit's patience with new riders was remarkable. It was as if he understood exactly what they needed. A special moment came when a young boy who hadn't spoken in months suddenly whispered hoarse while stroking Spirit's nose. His parents had tried everything to help him communicate, but something about Spirit's gentle presence had opened a door. The little girl nodded knowingly. "Spirit is magic," she said simply. The celebration included a demonstration of Spirit's therapy work. Children from the local rehabilitation center had come to show what they had learned with him. One by one, they demonstrated how Spirit helped them with balance, confidence, and movement. The little girl stood at his head throughout, her quiet encouragement keeping him calm and focused. Later in the afternoon, the stable owner gathered everyone around. She had a surprise announcement. "Thanks to Spirit's success," she said, "we're starting a full-time therapy program. More horses will be trained to help children, just like Spirit does." The little girl's face lit up at this news. Her friend's story would help even more people. As the sun began to set on the celebration, families gathered in the stable yard for a group photo. Spirit stood in the center, the little girl by his side. Behind them hung a banner that read, "Every heart deserves a second chance." The photographer caught the moment perfectly: Spirit's proud stance, the little girl's beaming smile, and the hope shining in everyone's eyes.